Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
This is a speaker meeting. Ruben will speak for 10 minutes, and then we will turn our meeting over to our main speaker, Bobbie, who will share their experience, strength, and hope. Take it away.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruben. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Ruben. First, let me say it's an honor and a privilege to be speaking at Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Thank you for your service, Stephanie, and welcome to anybody that's newer than me. And thank you, Guillermo. First, let me say I'm fucking nervous as shit. It's like I got this thing, like it's cross between fear and anxiety. I think they should call it fangxiety or something. So, I'm just going to talk about, like, briefly some things that I didn't want to talk about for years, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about, like, some of the solution. So I definitely am not, like, from a family that was from the Brady Bunch, and I held this in for a lot of years. I am a product of a military family. My father was in the Marine Corps. He went to Vietnam. He was not only a Marine, but he was in this unit called, they were Recon Special Forces. So basically he was a trained killer. And my mom was a little small Filipino subservient little lady, and I'm not making this about race, but this is my truth, this is my reality, and this is how it went down for me when I was a kid. And so the house I grew up in, there was child abuse, there was physical abuse, there was sexual abuse on my sisters. We walked around on eggshells for years. This is like the only second time I've shared this at group level. I finally had enough courage to share it at, like, my home group, like, about a month ago. But, it got to the point where I needed to take the power out of it. And I started realizing that this isn't just about me, and I'm not unique in any way. And there's probably some people that have been down the same road as me, or at least something similar, and are, like, stuffing it like I did for a long time. So that's what happened. We were forced to. That happened. My sister was like the other woman in the house. I'm not talking about this was just a one day or one time thing that happened. This is how I grew up. My older sister was the other woman in the house. My mom turned us kids against my other sister. I was the third child of 4. I have a younger brother and 2 older sisters. It was just a day-to-day survival for us kids. So we weren't close then, and we're not close now. And that's how it's been. People say, well, maybe if I do some work around that, it'll change. But you know what? How are you going to change something that was never fixed? But that's why I got a sponsor today. So I left home when I was like 13, and I never looked back. I felt like it was safer to be on the street, sleeping in bushes, couch surfing. My dad made us work at night at his little janitorial service, and then we get beat for, like, not keeping up our studies. We get beat for missing an dumping a trash can. We get beat for missing an ashtray. That's when you can smoke in buildings. And I left home at 13, and I ended up on the street. What back then I thought they were older guys. In my mind, I mostly grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood. Oh, and by the way, I had an identity crisis because all the other little kids were black. Like I said, I don't want to make this about race, but this is my reality. And little kids can be very honest, and they can find the differences in you real quick. And they used to tell me all the time that I wasn't black and I had white people's hair. And I already felt indifferent now because what I found out when I got found out when I got older was I was an alcoholic. So I was going to feel indifferent anyway. But when I was a little kid, that's how I felt. It wasn't until I got in the rooms and started doing some work and started hearing some of you guys share that that you guys felt the same way I did when I was a kid. But you got to remember, I was just a little kid, man, and it was very confusing for me. So started hanging around some guys. They were just, in my mind, they fed me. But I used to have to fight with them all the time. They're older than me. They thought they were pimps, pushers, and players. And I think about it, they're just a bunch of alcoholics and addicts, just like I was. Somehow or another, it was in a place, I was born in Oakland. I was in San Diego, California. It was a gang-infested neighborhood. The Crips and the Bloods run rampant down there. One thing that my father did give me, was working all those years doing janitorial work, was a strong work ethic. Wow, already? So, I'm glad I got that off my chest. So anyway, make a long story short, let me just fast forward a long way. So I did a lot of geographicals. I did little stints in county jail. Every time the judge would give me a joint suspension, I would straighten up because jail is really segregated. And don't remember, I always had this identity crisis. So every time I went to county jail, and then my name's Ruben. So it's like, are you Mexican or black or what are you? My father's name was Ruben and he was this dark. So that's just the name that I had. So, lots of geographicals. I got lots of failed relationships. I got 3 kids, 3 baby mamas, 3 different states. In 92, I walked in the in-between fellowship because I was living with this woman in Oakland that was smoking crack, and I was smoking crack with her, and she said, you need to go do something. So I went to the in-between fellowship, and I saw a sign that they had up there that said I was feeling really bad because I had holes in my shoes, and I walked outside, and I saw a man with no feet. And it kind of planted a seed. From then on, I knew that there was another way, but I would come in the rooms and I'd get 6 months here, 6 months there, a year here, 3 years there. I didn't do what was suggested. I didn't get the sponsor. I didn't do the work. I was like, as long as I got a job, as long as I got a place, as long as I got a cute girlfriend, as long as I got a car, it's all good. I'm okay. I don't need to do the work. But what happened was I kept bouncing in, bouncing out until finally my clean date is 7/7/14. I just turned a year old. What's different this time is I got the sponsor. It was a very painful process. If you're new, please, you don't have to go through that. Get a sponsor, work the steps. We're not guaranteed to come back in here. You're not guaranteed to go through all those geographicals, go to jail sober and go, I don't have no excuses no more. You're not guaranteed to even come back in here. Get a sponsor, work the steps. That's the easy way. What did help me stay sober all that time was I did a lot of service. And I just want to read something, a couple of things out of this is from As Bill Sees It. And the first one is to survive trials in our, sorry about that, I keep forgetting I'm not as young as I used to be. And I'm fucking nervous. Lord help me. Okay. To survive trials. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes wholly to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. Release from alcohol and not flight from it is our answer. Faith without works is dead. How appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he cannot survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he does not work, he will surely drink again, and if he drinks, he will surely die. Then faith will be dead indeed. And one more, okay? 2 more, actually. As we made spiritual progress, it became clear that if we were ever to feel emotionally secure, we would have to put our lives on a give and take basis. We would have to develop the sense of being in partnership or brotherhood with all those around us. We saw that we would need to give constantly of ourselves without demand for repayment. When we persistently did this, we gradually found that people were attracted to us as never before. And even if they failed us, we could be understanding and not too seriously affected. The unity, the effectiveness, and even the survival of AA will always depend upon our continued willingness to give up some of our personal ambitions and desires for the common safety and welfare. Just as sacrifice means survival for the individual alcoholic, so does sacrifice mean unity and survival for the group and for AA's entire fellowship. One more thing and I'll be done. This is at the back of Doctors. Okay, I'm fucking hell nervous. I'm sorry.
All right.
I'll get through this. Thank you. This is the last page of Dr. Bob's Nightmare. I was like, I wanted to read something about service, and I was sitting in a meeting in the Hayward Fellowship, and this guy just out of nowhere just said it. God has a way of talking to me through you guys in these rooms. I always hear what I need to hear if I just stop and I listen. And this is the last page of Dr. Bob's Nightmare, and again, it's why I do service. It's why I'm up here fucking nervous as hell in front of all you strangers, feeling so uncomfortable, because I know I have to do this, because I tried Ruben's way for so many years, and it just got me back out there. Okay, so I spend a great deal of time passing on what I learned to others who want and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. Number 1, sense of duty. Number 2, it is a pleasure. 3, because in doing so, I am paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. And 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Thank you.
Bobbie, Lord, you got 44 minutes.
All right. Hi, I'm Bobbie. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Bobbie.
So I understand the acoustics aren't that good in this room, so I'm going to try and speak really loud. I'll pretend I'm teaching. And thank you so much for your share. Oh, man. Okay. All right. Awesome. So I have a sobriety date. I've been sober since November 21st of 2002. And I have a sponsor. I've been working with the same sponsor since I turned 2 years old, so I've been working with her for a really long time. We have never stopped working the steps, and that's been something that's been really important to me, that I just keep going through the steps with my sponsor. She knows me better than any human being on the face of the earth, better than my parents, my family, better than my best friends. And when I first started working with her, I was at one of those emotional bottoms in sobriety, which, if you've ever been there, they suck, you know what they're like. And one of the habits that I'd gotten into in my first, really in my first 90 days was to call my sponsor every day. And I don't call my sponsor every day anymore, but I call her more days than I don't. I probably check in with her, leave her a message or a text, like probably about 5 times a week. And I've been doing this for 10 years, so she's used to hearing from me. And I thought that at first, even though she never asked me to do that, that was just something that I wanted to do. And when I first started working with her, I was like, geez, like, why am I doing this? I'm an adult. Like, why do I need to call somebody and check in every day? And I realized that the reason why it was good for me was because it kept me honest, and I started paying attention to whatever I didn't want to tell my sponsor and realized that those were the things that I really needed to tell my sponsor. And, and 10 years later, that still has been a good practice for me to work really closely with her. We just started the steps over this past week, so I'm back on step 1. And at this point in my sobriety, I have complete faith that the steps in the program work. They have worked for me so well that I'm not afraid of step work anymore the way that I was when I first got sober, because I know that the inventory process, the amends process, the service, the developing a closer relationship with the God of my understanding, I know that works, and that it will lead me to a better life. And so it's actually, I'm very grateful now that I don't fight the process of the program anymore, and it doesn't frighten me. So to qualify, let's see. I am from New York. My family is crazy, and I love them, and they love me, but they're sick, and one of the things that I can say about my sobriety is that I can accept my family for being who they are, and love them anyway, and not have unrealistic expectations of my family to not be the way that they have always been. And so that took like 10 years. My mom is mentally ill, and so when I was growing up, she was in and out of the mental hospital. The way that her mental illness took shape was that she would have delusions that my father was the Antichrist, and she would periodically try to kill him. We laugh about these things because what else can you do, you know? So, like, when I was 16, she thought that I was a prophet sent by God. That my special gift was being able to predict when U2 songs were going to come on the radio. And I was supposed to help her kill my father, which through these different rituals that were very scary, obviously, like especially when you're a teenager. She ended up trying to stab him while he was sleeping. Luckily, she's really clumsy, so somehow she ended up like cutting herself. I don't even know. So she went to the hospital, and I got a drink. That's what I did because I didn't feel like making so I was like, okay, I'm out. You know. My drinking, I learned really young that drinking was a solution for the way that I felt. The way that I felt growing up, I don't know if it's because I'm an alcoholic or because my family was insane or what, but I felt very uncomfortable a lot of the time. I never really felt like I fit in. I never felt like I had the right clothes to wear at school. I never knew the smart thing to say or anything like that, or like what would be funny or anything. So I just always felt really uncomfortable, and when I had a drink, I immediately felt better. I either somehow suddenly knew the right stuff to say, or I thought I was saying the right stuff, or I didn't care what other people thought of me. And so either way, it was good. I felt like when I was drinking, like I could fit in all of a sudden. And I didn't start drinking every day until I was in high school. I had drank before that. Like, I drank by myself when I was 12. You know, I remember finding the Jack and Coke and making myself a Jack Daniels and feeling very sophisticated. And, you know, I felt very artsy, like sitting there drinking by myself and writing about my anger. And, you know, yeah, but once I was in high school, that was when I found people that drank and did drugs. And I was immediately attracted to those people. I remember when I was hanging out with, like, the group of good girls, like the nice girls that, you know, went to school and stuff like that. We went to a movie in my hometown in New York, and there was this guy that I knew from class, and he kind of came out of the shadows, and we knew that he smoked pot, you know, and he asked me for a quarter, and he was like, yeah, I need to call my dealer. And I was like, I gave him a quarter for the payphone, right? And, you know, and I watched him, like, run off into the shadows, and I thought to myself, there goes freedom, you know, and I wanted to run off into the shadows, you know. I was like, oh, like, these people are they seem so free, like, they just don't give a fuck about anything, and I want to not care about anything. And so I started hanging out with those people, and, you know, and when my mom was crazy, and my father's way of dealing with stuff was to give us all, like, the silent treatment for months at a time. And so, like, he wasn't talking, my mom was insane, and I just kind of stopped going home. You know, I would just hang out with my friends, and I would sleep outside. There were a couple buildings, like office buildings, that they left unlocked in my hometown, and I could go in there and sleep in the hallways. I had a friend who worked at the all-night supermarket, and sometimes I would sleep in the supermarket on the paper towel aisle. Like, I would make myself a little bed in there. And, you know, there was a bread truck that would leave the bread on the sidewalk, and I would steal bread in the morning. And, you know, and I really felt like I was living life. I was very edgy, you know, and I, like, in my pretty safe suburban town, like, we were the criminal element. So, you know, like, the cops knew our names and everything like that, and they would mace us for loitering and everything. And it was, you know, it was exciting times in suburban New York. But you know, the effects of drinking were immediately apparent to me, or at least they were apparent to everybody else, you know, that the way that I drank wasn't normal. I was a blackout drinker. I drank, a lot of times I just didn't want to remember things, and so I would just drink. I was never able to manage my alcohol, you know, from the time I started drinking to the time I stopped. I could never figure out that formula. There was no time period in my life where I drank and used drugs normally. I just immediately started doing everything to the max. When I was in high school, like I said, my mom was sick, and I experienced a lot of violence with the people that I was hanging out with. And I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't have any like adult support to deal with it either. And so I just had to like learn how to deal with it on my own. And so the way that I dealt with things was like, well, if the people that I'm hanging out with are violent, but they're my friends, I just need to accept it. I just need to like make myself okay with it and like say that I'm not upset about things, or say that like, oh, bad things happen sometimes. Oh, it's okay. And that was really like my way of dealing with trauma, was just to pretend that I wasn't affected by it, and to continue drinking, because it got to a point pretty early that, that I would start having a lot of feelings and emotions like that were like, they were really, I felt really bad, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And so I would drink. I guess you were so honest in your share that you're inspiring me to be honest too. I just loved hearing you. So when I was 16, I was raped, and I was at a party and somebody raped me, and I was screaming, and the other people at the party broke the door down to get me out, and they did, but it was too late. The damage was done, and the next day, the person who had hurt me was still there, and we all like went out to lunch together, and I had like no idea how to handle any of this stuff that happened. About a week later at school, somebody touched me on the shoulder, and I like flipped out. Like a man touched me on the shoulder, and I just totally flipped out. And, and some of my friends were like, we're going to kick that guy's ass. We're going to go to the cops, this and that. And somebody held me up at knife point in a parking lot, and they told me that if I told anybody what had happened to me, that I would, that he would slit my friends' throats, And so at this time, like, these were 16, 17-year-old kids, you know what I mean? I look back and I'm like, we were all kind of children at this time, but like we're dealing with these really adult things. And so because I didn't know what to do and I didn't have anybody to talk about it with, I just told myself that I would have to make myself okay. And what happened was that when I was drinking, all of that stuff would come out. Usually when I was in a blackout, I would get really aggressive. I would be hysterically crying. I would be uncontrollable. I'd be promiscuous. I mean, just all of this stuff came out, and my alcoholism was both my solution and added to the problem with it too. So when I went away to college, I chose my college based on location. I went to college in New Orleans, so I could drink in the streets. I was very excited about Mardi Gras. Apparently the school got a week off for Mardi Gras. I actually didn't last long enough in the school to make it to Mardi Gras, but that was the thought going in. And right away, like I thought that if I changed location, that I don't know. I guess I thought things would be different, but my first night unsupervised in New Orleans, I found myself in like some man's like construction site where he was renovating. I don't even know what was going on. And so like, and it was another one of the situations where I'm drunk, I'm scared. There's some scary man that I don't know who's like, like, what do I do here? And it was like everything was just happening again. Like this was just my life. I picked up harder drugs when I was in college. I became addicted to heroin. And I stopped going to class, and so that was pretty much what I started doing. My folks called and they said, "What did you spend all of our money on?" And I somehow hadn't realized that it was their money that I was spending. Like I didn't understand ATM cards at the time, or like where the money came from. And so I was on acid when they called, and I told them the truth. I was like, I spent it all on heroin. And like my good family, they were like, my good codependent family, they were like, are you sure? Like, did you buy it for someone else? And I was like, no, it's all for me. Like, and they put me on a flight home that weekend. I was incredibly resentful. I was like, how dare you deprive me of my education? You're taking me out of college. I was the maid of honor in my sister's wedding. That was a disaster, and it was videotaped. And and then I left. I met a Marine who'd gone AWOL, and he was going to take me to Florida. We were in love, and so I just left home. I moved to Florida with this guy. He was not the one. And so I left Florida. I took a Greyhound bus to back to New Orleans. I had like 2 relationships on the bus. I was like, I broke up with somebody to switch seats. You know what I mean? It was a long bus ride. It was very exciting. And I got to New Orleans, and I swore up and down that I was going to stay sober, but I didn't. I stayed sober for 4 days, and I was walking down the street looking for a job on St. Charles, looking for a job at the Rite Aid on Napoleon, and there was a junkie in front of the building. I recognized him as a junkie. He was covered in track marks. He was sweating profusely. He was slumped, literally, like next to the building. He'd said, "Hey, you're pretty." And I was like, "Really?" You know? He told me he could find me a job, and I was like, "Wow, like, that's so perfect. Like, I was looking for a job, and now I met you, you know?" And I helped him up and followed him down the street. He never found me that job, but I moved in with him a couple days later. He became my boyfriend, and and then I picked up again, and I started using, and it was on. And I started shooting heroin, shooting cocaine, smoking crack, and this was just kind of my life. We used to have let the prostitutes use the bathroom with the crack dealers and stuff like that. We would like rent it out to like make some more money. I would scam tourists at the bars and everything like that for money. I would help people steal cars. I would help people steal bicycles. I lived next door to a pawn shop and down the street from the crack house and across the street from a bar. So I had like my whole business right there. It was like prime real estate, you know. And at some point I realized that New Orleans was killing me, is what I thought. I knew that heroin and crack were a problem. It's like, okay, like these are problems, you know. But I really thought that New Orleans was the problem, and I met these people when I was it's a cool story, actually. I had decided that I wanted to go to Taos, New Mexico. I'd like picked it out on a map, and I had gotten involved with this vampire strip dancer who was my boyfriend at the time, and we were living together. But surprise, surprise, he was crazy, you know. And I had just moved out of his place. I had all my stuff on my back, and I was like, man, like today was the day that I had planned to leave for New Mexico, and there were these hippie kids in Jackson Square in New Orleans, like doing handstands and stuff like that. And one came up to me and was like, "Hey, like we're going to New Mexico. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "That's God. Like this is God. Like this person is coming up to me and asking me if I want to go to the place that I want to go to." And it was so synchronistic that I was like, yes. And so I got into the VW bus, and we and we went to a rainbow gathering, and that started the next phase of my using. I stopped using crack and heroin. And I haven't used them since then, actually. I was able to stay away from them, but I just started hitchhiking around the country. I hitchhiked around the country for about a year or so. I went to a lot of rainbow gatherings, called myself Sparrow, you know. That was my name. I had my dreadlocks and my dog, Laughter. This dog was like, I thought the dog was my spirit guide. I would like take acid and I would interpret my dog's actions as to like what I should do in the future. So literally, like that was how I was making major decisions. Where should I go? I would ask Laughter, and he would like look to the left. A lot of pressure on him. I made amends to him, you know. Yeah. He never really got to be a puppy, you know. So I was hitchhiking, I was homeless, I was sleeping under bridges and eating out of dumpsters and working day labor, and I was drinking a lot, I was doing a lot of drugs. I stopped showering for months at a time. I had like really, really bad lice and like mold growing on me, and I was and if you had asked me at the time if I was okay, I would have told you that I was free, that I was living the life of my dreams, that you were all slaves of Babylon, and that you just didn't know where it was at. I actually thought that I was doing a public service by doing drugs and hitchhiking around the country. I thought that I was telling people about another way they could live, and like I was like, you don't have to work, you know, you could live like me and be free. And nobody really took me up on this, but I was, you know, starting my one-woman revolution. And so eventually, like, I was back in New Mexico with Laughter, actually, and I hit a bottom from using where I realized that none of the people that I was around actually, like, cared about me, and I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do, and I was like, I just have no idea where to go. And so I called my parents collect from a payphone, and they were so happy to hear from me. They actually flew me from New Mexico to New York to come home, and they didn't know what to do with me, and I didn't know what to do with me. And so they cleaned me up, and they put me in college again, because they were like, we don't know what to do with you. So, you know, I was showered, shaved, and this and that, and then they put me in school. And then when I was in school, again, that was where I really, this is where I stopped drinking when I was in college, and I could see my alcoholism better when I was surrounded by, like, all of the other normal kids. And people drink a lot in college, but I still drank more than they did, you know, and I certainly had very different stories, and all of that, like, trauma that was right behind me, it started coming up, like, big time. So when I was in school, I was, you know, drinking. I would tell myself I wasn't drinking in the morning because I woke up in the afternoon, like, you know, all those different ways that we make our drinking okay. I carried what I called emergency beers with me at, like, all times. And, like, you know, I always had one in my purse so that I could drink if I needed to, like, just if I need to, you know. And I didn't realize that was unusual. I was talking to a friend of mine in school, and I had just mentioned in passing that I'd blacked out every night for the past 3 months. And he was like, that's really weird. Like, that's not normal drinking. And my drinking got sadder and lonelier. Basically, like, it wasn't fun anymore. I would go to this bar in the town where I was going to school called Ye Old Watering Hole, and they had a beer can museum. And so I would go there by myself. I would shoot pool. I would, like, try and, like, maybe pick somebody up or something like that. And it usually didn't work. And then I would hitchhike back to where I was staying, and I was disgusted with myself, you know. I felt like I had no idea who I was. I was afraid that the interesting part of my life had already gone, and, like, now I was just I just felt like a pathetic drunk, you know, that couldn't get my shit together. And when I hit my bottom, I don't know why I stopped drinking when I did. I do think that it was grace, and so I don't really have any answer of, like, why did you stop when you stopped. It just kind of happened. It was like one day I woke up. I had driven drunk the night before. People were mad at me. You know, I didn't know why they were mad at me, but I was sure that I'd done something, and I prayed, and I had prayed a lot before then. So I don't know why, you know, it wasn't answered before then, but for some reason, like, I asked God if he would help me stay sober, if he would help me to not drink. And it was a few months before I came into AA, but I didn't. I white knuckled it for about 11 months. I was sober, and I would go occasionally to a meeting, and then I would, I would not want to go to meetings because I was, frankly, I was afraid of people in meetings. I thought that it was kind of cultish. Nobody seemed like they had what I wanted. Like, I was very good at picking up at things that were weird or different about people. Like, this woman, like, I remember this older woman, she was like, we go bowling. I was like, no, thank you. She had, like, lipstick on her teeth. I mean, it was just like, I was like, no. But my world got smaller and smaller. And if you've ever been sober, if you've ever been dry, then you know how horrible it is. It's really, really painful. It was just my head 24/7, and I got very controlling about my environment. I thought that if I could just control everything, that I would be happy. And so I wanted to control everything. I wanted to control, like, sounds that, like, somebody mowing the lawn down the street from where I was would throw me into, like, a fury, you know. So I started wearing earplugs, you know, like, that was my solution for this. You know, I didn't know how to enjoy anything, so I started measuring things by quantity instead of quality. Like, I knew that hiking should make me happy, and so I would go hiking, and I would time myself. I'd be like, well, I've been in the woods for an hour. I've probably had a good time. So I think that was literally, like, how I structured my experience. And I just couldn't feel anything except for bad, you know? So when I started going to meetings regularly, I actually start my sobriety date from that point, even though I've been sober for a little bit before that. I was so crazy when I started going to meetings that I had to be a newcomer. I had to let myself be a newcomer. I decided that it was down to 3 options. I was either going to use again, I was going to kill myself, or I was going to try AA one more time. I knew that using again, I'd been through so many different violent experiences that I was afraid to drink, because I just knew what happened to me over and over and over again when I was out there was that I had really horrible things happen to me. And so killing myself was looking like a pretty good option, but I decided to try AA, and I did. I went to a meeting in my hometown, Nyack, New York, and it was these 2 guys at an H&I meeting. I didn't know it was an H&I meeting. The H&I ward was on lockdown, and so it was just me and the 2 people doing service. And they just talked to me for an hour, and they gave me all of the suggestions that I had heard before, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, work the steps, do service. And for some reason, I could hear it that night. I just was ready, I guess. And I left that meeting feeling just a little bit better than I had when I walked in. And so I just jumped into AA with everything that I had, and that was November 21st, 2002. I always forget if it was the 21st or 22nd, but the 21st. And so I started going to a lot of meetings. I was just about to finish school, and I was living in my hometown, so I didn't have a lot going on. I had no friends, basically. Nobody wanted to hang out with me because I was such a bitch that, nobody wanted to be around me. So I just went to meetings. I went to between 2 and 4 meetings a day for the first 9 months. I lived in AA pretty much, and that was just what I did. I went to meetings. I shared at every meeting. I cried at pretty much every meeting. And people just told me to keep coming back. I got a sponsor right away. I always share this because I think it's important. The first woman that I asked to sponsor me, she seemed perfect. She seemed so perfect. And she never called me back, right? And so I had to ask somebody else to be my sponsor. I think that if I was not ready, somebody not returning my phone call would have sent me over the deep end. But I was desperate enough to be less sensitive than I normally was. And I think that it's been something that's really important to me, is that I'm a really sensitive person, and that doesn't always work well in the rooms. People say things that, are sometimes insensitive, and you just have to deal with it, because for me, I had to deal with things because this is the solution for me. I don't really have another place to go. So it doesn't matter if I don't like somebody, or somebody doesn't say hi to me, or if somebody doesn't return my phone call or something like that. This is it, we're all here. There's a lot of meetings. We're very lucky for that in this area, that there are a lot of meetings. And, and if you don't like a meeting that you're at, you can go to a different one, and if you don't like somebody in AA, there's probably somebody else that you do like, you know what I mean? That's just the way that it works. When I had about 9 months, I moved to California. I'd never been to a young people's meeting before, and I started going to young people's meetings, I felt like people here got sober younger than I did. I was 22 when I got sober, and the people that were here had been gotten sober when they were 15. So I was they're not really alcoholics. They were wow, you're out there for a long time. This one guy said that but I went, and I think that was really good for me, because I learned how to socialize with people my own age, or in my own peer group. A lot of times when I was using, I always hung out with older people, especially older people would kind of take care of me a little bit more, and in AA too, I've always felt very comfortable at meetings where I was the young person. I got a lot of attention, and so I learned how to interact with people my own age. It was very nerve-wracking. I was very scared. So my solution for being scared was to get to meetings very, very early, before anybody else got there, because that way people would be coming up to me, because I had this intense fear of walking up to a crowd of people. I would see a crowd of people, look like they were all talking and having a great time, and then I would walk up and feel trying to be in on the conversation or something like that. And so that was my way of dealing with it. I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps. But like I said, at about 2 years, I hit this kind of emotional bottom. And it was all around relationships for me. I've always, I feel like relationships have been my Achilles heel in sobriety. I'm really good at school. I'm good at work. I'm good at, like, you know, I can deal with my family, like, for the most part. But, you know, but relationships, especially romantic relationships, were very, very difficult for me. I didn't have any kind of, like, reasonable set of boundaries. I've told you guys about some of my exes, so, you know, like, you can imagine, like, I was just really crazy in that way. And so when I started working with my current sponsor, who I told you I've been working with for 10 years, I remember when I sat her down, right, and I told her all of my problems. I'm like, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, I think I have an eating disorder, sometimes I want to cut myself, I'm crazy in relationships, and, you know, I just kind of laid them all out, and I was like, okay, so here you go. And she said that we were going to work on my relationship with God. We were going to work the steps, and I was going to develop a relationship with a higher power. And that wasn't one of the problems that I'd listed, so I'm a little confused as to, like, how this was going to work, but she had what I wanted. And the way that she had what I wanted was that she was not afraid of people. When I saw her facilitating a group inventory at the Wild Bunch, people would give her hugs, and she wasn't afraid of them. So, like, she was, you know, she was friendly to people. And at this point in my sobriety, I'd learned about boundaries, and I'd learned about, like, feelings and boundaries. And I had so many boundaries that I was barricaded. Like, I was a difficult person to be friends with because I had so many boundaries, you know, like, somebody would say something to me like, you look nice, and I'd be like, that's a boundary, you know, like, that's like, that makes me feel uncomfortable that you're objectifying me, or, you know, just like, like, how can you be friends with somebody if they're always finding something wrong with what you're saying, or if they're so sensitive that you can't, like, talk to them normally? And so we started working the steps around my relationship with God, and what I found was that worked for, I won't say that worked for all my problems, because I did need to seek outside help for some of the things that I've been through, but it enabled me to get enough clarity to figure out what kind of outside help I needed for, you know, to deal with things. When I had about 4.5 years sober, I hit another bottom in sobriety, and that was around when one of my best friends at the time, Sasha, she killed herself, and she'd been sober, and she took her own life. And after my best friend was diagnosed with cancer, and they told me that he was going to die too, and I just, like, flipped out. Like, I didn't know what to do. I was just an emotional wreck, and and so I ended up, you know, going through the steps again in a different way with my sponsor to basically, like, work through the grief and to figure out, like, why, not to figure out, but to, like, I guess to get some kind of understanding on why some people stay sober and some people don't make it. And that's always been something that's really hard for me to understand. Like, I don't know why I get to be here. Like, I don't know why I've been sober for 12 years and why other people aren't even here anymore, you know, but I'm grateful to be here. I hated when people would say, some of us die so that others can live. I'm like, fuck you. You know, like, that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, that's not a loving God in my mind that, like, kills people so that other people can live. But, you know, but I did have to, like, basically come to some kind of, like, understanding about it. And it helped me to realize, like, basically how important relationships are and friendships are, and to think about it from that perspective. Okay, so 5 minutes left. Since then, in the past 8 years, I've done a lot of things that I've wanted to do in sobriety, because of the, I guess it would be stability. Like, I'm a pretty stable person today, actually. Like, I'm pretty level-headed for the most part. I still have my emotional ups and downs for sure, but I'm pretty grounded. I've been able to do a lot of things that I wanted to do, like, I wanted to be a writer, and so I was able to get it together to publish my writing and to continue trying to do that. I wanted to play music. I wanted to perform, and so I got to do some performances. And, you know, I wanted to go to graduate school, and I've been doing that. You know, I became a school teacher at some point and taught high school, and that was a really great way to be of service. There's, you know, a lot of people that, especially kids like me, you know, that didn't have anybody to talk to. I could be that person for my students to talk to and everything. I recently just got back into the country. I've been living in Bulgaria for the past year. I was on a grant actually, and so I was representing the U.S. government. So one of my jobs was to make Bulgarians like Americans more than Russians. So that's what I'm doing. And there were no meetings. There was one meeting a week in Bulgarian, and so I've had a year of having to fly to different countries to go to meetings in English. I am so grateful to my sponsor because I was able to continue working with her through Skype, and I had a sponsee who contacted me almost every day that I was gone, and I have so much love for those two people that, like, I feel like they saved my life. My boyfriend was the only English-speaking person in recovery in the country that I could find, so we were stuck with each other, and he was great. We would have meetings together sometimes, but those got a little awkward. Sometimes I would be sharing about him, and like it would come to an abrupt end. But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to Steph and my boyfriend, because I just don't know what I would have done without him. It was like, I'm so glad there was like one other English speaking, person in the country that. Not only did I get to, be around somebody in recovery, but we also fell in love. I feel like I found my, my soulmate, basically. And so he'll be coming here soon. Yes, I'm very happy about that. And so, like, life today is I'm just kind of adjusting back. I have such a different attitude towards my life now. I'm finishing up grad school. Again, I'm, applying to PhD programs. I am interviewing for jobs. And it's like, one of the things that's so massively different is that I have such a better idea as to my own worth today. Like, for so long, I just didn't think I was worth anything. I was like, I just felt like I had to make everybody like me. And so that was my goal, was just to get everybody to like me. I didn't realize that I actually had something to offer. And I really feel like I've learned what I have to offer through working the program and being of service. Really short pitch for general service. It taught me almost all of the life skills that I've needed professionally. I've learned in general service. So it's very frustrating and tedious and boring, but for me it was really, really helpful to take part in that. And yeah, I just love AA. I'm so glad to be able to come to meetings again, and that I understand what everybody here is saying, and you understand me. It's incredible. I said, when I first came in, I finish up and now, that the people told me that they said things, it sounded so cheesy. Hold on to your seat. You're going to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. And as cheesy as that is, for me, it's been completely true. Like, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. I have friendships of people that I love my friends. I care about them. I think about them. I think about their needs. I think about what they're going through, and they're there for me. I'm very close with my family today. When I first got sober, I didn't really know where Bulgaria was, much less did I ever imagine that I would get to live in Europe for a year, and that's just incredible. And so whenever I have those moments of doubts now, I try to look back at my own history, my own sober history, and the history of the people that I'm close with. And there's not a doubt in my mind that the program works. That if you do this stuff, this really uncomfortable stuff, and you keep showing up and you do it, that, our lives get better. Our relationships improve. Our experience of, our self-esteem improves. Like, we become, we become who we want to be. Like, we start having, more autonomy and choice, and we don't live at the mercy of a destructive disease, and, man, I mean, there's no need to look for a higher power, like it's somewhere out there, because it's right in here. We're a room full of miracles. The fact that we're all sitting here when we shouldn't be here, it's pretty amazing. So anyway, I hope that somebody got something out of that. If not, lots of other meetings. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.